Alright, so we're in the Kuzari. Let me tell you what page we're on. And we're in the second essay, which is going to be on page 142. Just a recap from last week is that the king had converted to Judaism, and the first question that he asks the rabbi is about the names of Hashem. So let's read that last paragraph again, page 142. This is an old book that we took a break from for a very long time. 142 at the bottom of the page. When the king studied the Torah and the prophets, he took the rabbi as his teacher and asked him questions regarding the Hebrew text. He first asked him about the names and attributes which are ascribed to the Blessed Creator, since a number of these attributes imply some level of physicality, whereas physicality is precluded both intellectually and explicitly by the Torah. So the first question this king has once he becomes Jewish is, what's the deal with all the names of Hashem? And that's a funny thing, because why didn't he ask this earlier? But we're saying that there's a level, once a person becomes Jewish, there's a new level of understanding, a new level of depth that a person wants to uncover, and that is exactly where the king is at right now. So a little bit of introduction, some of which I said last week. When you look into languages, languages are an interesting thing. I was talking to a principal recently at a school, not in San Diego, about tuition and the cost of tuition. And there are parents who will drive a $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 car, will go to the vacation in the Bahamas on spring break, they'll go to the Caribbean in winter break, and they, every year come June, July, August, they apply for scholarships because they don't have enough money to pay tuition. And they say, we're broke, you know, we need a lot of money, what can we do? Da, 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 da. Let me tell you, broke. The broke can't get you to the Bahamas, not taking you to the Caribbean, this is what it is. And it turns out that in life, people have what they want. They'll spend on what they feel is important to them. If going to the Bahamas is a value, and they have $20,000 to do that, then they're not going to have that $20,000 for something they feel is less important, which is the education of their child. Now, it could be there are some people who don't have $20,000 at all, and that's why there's a scholarship fund. But not because you spend $20,000 to go to the Bahamas means that $20,000 of the school tuition is not important to you. And this goes like this in every place. You look in a person's house, and you can judge very much by the way their house is set up what is important to them. When I come into a house and I see all the couches and the chairs in the room are facing one wall, and on that wall there's a TV, that's a not so subtle message to the family that this TV is the center of life in this home. You could argue, you could be upset that I say that. That's okay, that's what I think. When you go into a person's house and you see that there are bookcases, or you see that there are toys, you see that whatever it is that you're looking at, it will tell you about this person's house. I was in a person's house and all the walls were covered with weapons. Guns, knives. There are some people that have this crazy... You go to some people's house, they have dead animals all over their walls. Yeah, I don't know what to tell you, but it's what people do. There are all kinds of people. They tell you what's important in their life. It's very easy to make this call. Now, is it an accurate reading? Yes. Is it all of who they are? I hope not. But somebody once said if America were to... There would be some disaster and there was a volcano that erupted and 2,000 years from now archaeologists would begin undigging the United States, they would think that we have some God that is the TV. Because everything in the house is facing that direction. Everything in the house is looking that direction. And that would be very confusing for somebody who comes by and says, you know, when you come to this room, what is everything facing in this room? The Torah. So we know that this room is focused around the Torah. And if somebody were to walk in here and they wouldn't know what the Torah is, they say, what is the most important thing in the room? They'll tell you, the Torah. That's what it is. In every language, the most important thing in that language is going to have many, many words to explain it. I mentioned to you that last week that in the Eskimo language there are 15 words for snow. Why? Like I explained, very easy to understand. First off, snow is your life. So snow, what's the difference between ice and snow?
Very good.
Why do you have two different words for it?
It's the consistency.
Very good, the consistency is different, you know? You could fall in snow and you'll be okay. You fall in the ice and not so nice. What's the difference between sleet and slush, between hail and snow, between all these things? It's different. How do you explain that difference? You kind of have to be there to understand it. And therefore, people who live in cultures that are much more experienced with snow will have more words for it. I didn't know what slush and sleet and black ice. I never heard these words when I grew up in San Diego. Then I moved to Baltimore, and all of a sudden you fall and you're hurting yourself. But what's that? Oh, that's black ice. Why is it called black ice? You can't really see it. You have to be very careful where you walk. You learn about salting snow, about shoveling snow. But in that language, in the Eskimo language, there are many words for snow because that's what's important. In Saudi Arabia, there are 15 words for camel. Camel. A camel is, it's kind of like, you have cars, people have camels. This is a very important part of the language. In Am Yisrael, we have many, many, many words for Hashem. And the reason is, we have a lot to do with Hashem. We talk a lot about Hashem. We study a lot about Hashem. We experience Hashem in very different ways in our life. See, for some religions, you go to church, you go to temple, you go to wherever you go to connect to God, and you connect and you leave, and the rest of your life is pretty mundane. It's pretty godless. Even those who talk about infusing your life with divinity, with godness, they don't actually have any tangible ways to really go about doing that. You ask a person, I want to be a good Christian husband. What does that mean? Which books of Christianity were written for husbands? So he has to have his own imagination to figure out, well, what would God want from me? And it's all this imagination. But when a Jew follows halakha, they follow musar and derech eretz and the way a person lives, we experience Hashem in the strangest places. We bump into Hashem when we're shopping for Shabbat. We bump into Hashem when we're making chicken soup. We bump into Hashem when we're raising our children. We bump into Hashem when we're doing laundry because it has to dry by a certain time before Shabbat starts. We bump into Hashem in all kinds of places. And therefore you can't expect us to use the same mundane word for Hashem that other people would. Because we're experiencing Hashem in many, many different ways. In fact, Martin Luther, who I quoted last week, not Martin Luther King, Martin Luther #1. Martin Luther, do you know much about him? He was a good friend of the Jews in the beginning. He was a German.
I think he was originally a Catholic priest, wasn't he?
Yeah, he left.
He left, yeah. But he left, yeah.
Martin Luther loved the Jews. Because he thought if he loved the Jews, they would all convert to Christianity. And then when he realized they wouldn't, he called them some really ugly names, how stiff-necked they were, and then decided that it was a nice time to kill them. Yeah. And the glorious founder of, I believe it was Protestantism, no? What is he?
The Luthers?
The Reformation.
Lutherans. They were
Lutherans,
correct.
I believe he founded the Reformation.
But they were a reformed version of the Catholic Church.
Oh, really?
And a lot of what they tried to get away from was idols as they saw it. But his Jewish relationship wasn't so
A lot of
good.
Norway people are Lutherans.
But when he translated the Bible, he said the hardest word to translate is Hashem's name. There are too many ways. And so when he translates, he just uses God. What else can he say? God, Lord, God, Lord, God, Lord. What are you going to write?
That's it.
Nothing else. What are the words you have for God in English? You don't. He was writing in German. It's pretty similar. Now, when you talk to a Jew about Hashem, and this Hashem is an experience, if a Jew were to tell you, I see Adonai, Yud Kei Vav Kei. No one said, oh, and I saw Adonai Tzivaot. Now in English we say the Lord and the Lord of hosts. And what is the difference between the Lord and the Lord of hosts? It doesn't mean anything to us. But when a person experiences Adonai, and they experience Adonai Tzivaot, those are two completely different experiences. Now, do they think that they're talking about different gods? No, it's obvious to both of them that they're talking about the same Hashem that they've experienced in different ways. And that's why you find in the prayers, Elohei Avraham, the God of Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, the God of Yitzchak, Ve'Elohei Yaakov, and the God of Yaakov. Somebody who is a Christian reading that book might think, hey look, they have a three-part God also. The God of Abraham, the God, see, it should have just said, Elohei Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, the God of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Why does it repeat the God of in between each one? They experience him very differently. And therefore, even though we're talking about the same Hashem, it's a different relationship with that Hashem. And we invoke all of them. Avraham did not see what Yitzchak saw. Yitzchak did not see what Yaakov saw. Everybody saw something different, but we know that we're talking about the same Hashem, whose root and origin and source is the same being. Today, in our post-prophetic age, We don't have prophecy. If we do, it's hidden from us.
Why would it be hidden?
And it's a lower level of closeness to Hashem that we have in this world than we did when we had a temple
Oh,
standing in
right.
Jerusalem. And we're post that. It's very difficult for us to try to understand the difference between Hashem's names. Because we barely experience Hashem at all. Let alone experience Him differently. Or experience Him in one way and then another way and then, oh, now I experience Hashem today in a different fashion. It's very rare for us to have this understanding. And you'll find that it's very difficult to connect to this topic. What does it mean Hashem is like this, Hashem is like that? This is exactly what the Kuzari is struggling with. He said, I live in a generation that doesn't have prophecy. So what does it mean? Why does Yecheskel use that word? Why does Yeshayahu use a different word? Why do Moshe and Yoshua speak differently? Why? What are they seeing that I don't see? And the answer is, we're living in an era that's very difficult to explain this. The first translation of the Torah that happens after the Second Temple in Jewish tradition is going to be that of, not a bad translation, a positive translation, Onkelos. Right? The translation of Onkelos. What's the story of Onkelos? He was a Roman from the royal family
That converted.
that converted to Judaism. His uncle was the emperor of Rome. He converts to Judaism and he becomes the greatest rabbi of his generation. And he writes a divinely inspired translation of the Chumash. We consider it so authoritative. Almost any Chumash you'll find has his translation in there. It's into Aramaic. And when he translates the different names of Hashem, it's always the same God. He doesn't translate them differently. He just uses, why? We're coming out to Purim soon. Purim is the Jewish text that does not have God's name in it at all. Why?
It's hidden.
We say it because it's hidden, right? It's hidden. That's Kabbalistic influence on Jewish tradition. What's the reason why Hashem's name is not there? What's the last verses of the Megillah? Do you remember? This book becomes recorded in whose history? Are the Jews free at this point in history? After the Purim miracle, are we free people? No. Welcome back. We're not free people. Do we have our own kingdom in Jerusalem after the story of Purim? No, it's not the story of Hanukkah. The story of Purim is we stay in exile. So we don't have Jewish history to record. It's recorded in the books of Paras and Madai. That's what it says in the Megillah. In the non-Jewish books. And the Rishonim explain that the reason why Esther and Mordechai took out Hashem's name is because when I say Yud K Vav K, how does the American translate that? God.
Yeah.
When I say Hashem, and when the Christian says God, are we talking about the same thing? No. No.
They think we do. We are.
Correct. But when I say Lord to a Christian, what are they thinking of?
Yeah.
Yeshua.
Yeshua.
So if I were to write the word that would translate into Lord, I'm going to cause someone to substitute your God's name here. And so Mordechai and Esther were very particular not to write Hashem's name. They took it out. That's why you start to hear that whenever it says Hamelech, the king, without Achashverosh following, just the king, that's trying to allude to Hashem. It could be that's what happened. They took out all the names of Hashem and put in Hamelech, the king. That could be. Because Uncle says, what's going to happen when people get their hands on my book and they start to translate my works? We're going to have a Chumash that doesn't sound Jewish. And he's worried about that. And so the reason we have so many names of Hashem is because we experience Hashem in so many different ways. And just like other nations have different words for the things they interact with the most, Eskimos with snow, Saudi Arabians with camels, and Jews with Hashem. It doesn't mean that there are 15 different kinds of camels in Saudi Arabia. There are simply 15 different ways to say that word. And this is an important introduction to understand the rest of the conversation we'll have for the next few weeks about the names of Hashem. Let's read. Section 2. I feel like I'm going to get a speeding ticket over here in the Kuzari. We've already done more pages in a week than we did ever.
Yeah, I remember when we
I
started.
think we started in what, 2012 or
2012.
something. November
Page-
2012.
143. November 2012. What does that come out to a week? How many pages? Amar Hechaver. The rabbi said, Shemot haborei kulam. All of Hashem's names. Now look, see how it says all of God's names?
Except.
In Hebrew it says all of the Creator's names.
Oh.
It doesn't say God, it says haborei, the Creator. So why does he write God? Because that's the way you translate things in English. Chutz memforash, except for the explicit name. What is the explicit name of Hashem? Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey. You should know it's even forbidden. This year Marlene said Yud Kei Vav Kei. It's forbidden to even not just pronounce that word, but to say the spelling of it straight.
Oh.
You have to interrupt. You have to say Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey. You can't say Yud. You can't. That's considered.
Well, that's why you say why they say like K, right? Instead
Correct.
of
Now in
K.
Sephardic tradition, we never said K. This is K is an Ashkenazi thing.
Oh.
And you find that in fact one of the greatest Chachamim of Ashkenaz, the Chacham Tzvi, who was raised in Sephardic yeshiva actually, he writes that when he came back to Europe after his father sent him to yeshiva, comes back, that he couldn't bring himself to say Elokim, Elokei.
Oh.
He said it felt like he was, it's not the right way to say it. He would intentionally say Hashem's name when he would read from books. He said that's what I got from the Sfaradim when he studied it. It comes to a point where people are upset. Shabbat songs. Baruch Kel Elyon. Instead of Baruch El Elyon, blessed is the most high God. They say Baruch Kel Elyon, blessed is the most high Kel. Who is Kel? What is Kel?
You know, it sounds like you're mispronouncing the word.
Correct. Well, and that's done intentionally, but it's so much better for a person to say Elohim. What happened?
But to not say.
Saying Hashem's
the
name in
Tetragrammaton.
vain.
You're right.
Oh, so it's not to say the four-letter name of Hashem. So that's why we say instead Adonai, my master.
Right.
I want to use Hashem's name.
Because
It's kind of like if you have a boss. Oftentimes you don't come by the first name. Maybe in today's world already things are different, but Mr. So-and-so, Mrs. So-and-so. To give respect. If I'm your buddy, then I'll call you by your first name. But I'm not Hashem's buddy, and therefore I use a title of respect. And even though it says John, I'm going to call him Mr. Smith. Oh, his name is John. I know his name is John. That's what I write on. When I write a check to him, I don't write Mr. Smith. I write John. But I have to speak to him a little bit differently. Chutz me'amforash, except for this explicit name of Hashem, hem midot v'tavniot tfiliyot nilkechot ma'peuliyot habruim lo kefi gzerotav u'ma'asav. Their attributes and descriptions ascribed to Hashem based on how He affects His creations, in accordance with His decrees and deeds. So there's Yud Kei Vav Kei. That's Hashem's name. Then, in fact, in the Ashkenazi Kabbalists, they say, like the Sfaradim also, Havaya, Shem Havaya. Instead of Yud Kei Vav Kei, they just switch around the letters. So Havaya means existence, like the source of existence. When you see the Shem Hashem, that's the name of Hashem. Everything else is just their attributes or descriptions of Hashem. Nikra Rachum, He's called merciful. כשהוא מתקן עניין מי שהיו בני אדם מרחמים עליו לרוע עניינו. When he ameliorates,
Makes it better.
when he makes better the situation of someone who, because of his desperate state, would normally be the object of human mercy. When do we call Hashem merciful? When he makes a sick person heal. We feel bad for that sick person. Hashem heals them, so he's, you're so merciful, Hashem. Is that his name? No. It's an attribute. מייחסים אל הבורא הרחמים והחנינה, we ascribe to Hashem the attributes of mercy and charity, ואמיתתם אצלנו, when in reality, חלישות הנפש והמיית הטבע, ואין זה ראוי לו יתברך. When in reality, these traits, when measured in human terms, characterize one whose spirit has been wounded from seeing another's pain, and who has a natural instinct for compassion. What is someone who's merciful? Compassionate. Why do I have compassion?
Because you can understand the suffering of the other person, and you have a desire to help them.
Why do you have the desire to help them?
Because you were at that point at one place?
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe,
Because say something close. It hurts you to see someone else hurting.
right.
You see a person doesn't have money, so you take $1 if you want. But I don't need $1. Right now, the way to get over my hurt is to help somebody else. And that's the way the world works. That's a healthy way for the world to work. But it would be impossible to call Hashem merciful if that means that he sees someone suffering, that it hurts him, and therefore he helps them. That is ascribing way too much human emotion to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We're going to talk more about why that's about. Yeah?
We're talking about an anthropomorph, as if it were a person, because we come from the planet. And how could you possibly understand such an infinite being? You couldn't. So
Correct, and this is where Rabbi Yonatan is going.
Oh.
But he's trying to explain the reason we call him merciful is not because he saw someone suffering, it hurt him, and he had nothing to do, so he made him better. This is not the correct way to view Hashem's name. אבל אמנם הוא שופט צדק, גוזר בריש אדם אחד ואושר אדם אחר, מבלי שישתנה בעצמותו, ולא ירחם על אחד ולא יכעוס על אחר. But this description is not fitting for Hashem. Rather, he's a righteous judge and decrees upon one individual poverty and upon another individual wealth without essentially changing. He's not being merciful with one and angry with the other. Let's try to understand what I read to you. The names of Hashem are very few. Even though last week we said there are many names of Hashem, there are very few names of Hashem. Yud Kei Vav Kei, for example, is a name of Hashem. All the other titles, Harachaman, Hu Yishtabach, the merciful one shall bless us, that is not Hashem's name. That is a character trait that we ascribe to Hashem, and therefore it becomes from an adjective to a noun. Yep. Okay, let's leave. We're going to get to those names. When we say that Hashem is Rachum, Rachaman, he's merciful, it's not accurate. He didn't see someone suffering, felt that he has to help them, and became. Rather, he is mercy. In fact, the correct way to call it would be Baal HaRachamim, the master of mercy, the one who how do you define mercy? HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But we don't really have a human way to explain these words, which is why we resort to saying Harachaman, the merciful one. That's not correct, because that would imply a human emotion on HaKadosh Baruch Hu's name. And that's why in Tefillah, we oftentimes use words because we're trying to understand Hashem. We're trying to say, listen, Hashem, you're merciful, so please have mercy on me. We're not trying to humanize Hashem, rather we're trying to make Hashem understandable and palatable to us. And therefore the famous question, which I could give a shiur on for another 10 hours. How does Tefillah even work? How is it that I pray for something and I change Hashem's mind? If Hashem is perfect and He has a divine plan, so who am I to mess with His divine plan? And if I can mess with His divine plan, and all is for the good, but I can change the divine plan, what kind of divine plan is that? If I can change it. Why not even bother changing Hashem's plan in the first place? Why pray? Skip prayer. And these questions, it's such an injustice to mention these questions now and here. So I'm going to give you what took me many years to even understand, and I'm still trying to understand it. But the bare essence of Tefillah is not to change Hashem. We cannot change Hashem. There is nothing to be changed about Hashem. Rather, the only thing that can happen is to change ourselves. Tefillah is from the word lehitpalel, to fight, to struggle. Yeah. What is... Remember, Naphtali is named by his mother. One of the Naphtali. Why? Because I struggled, she says. She names him that name. It's about, listen, I take 3 steps back and 3 steps forward. And when I take those 3 steps back in the end, if I'm a different person, see, it's not that I say, Hashem, don't make, let's not talk about sickness. Or, let's say a person's sick, and he prays to Hashem, Hashem, don't make him sick. He's praying not to change Hashem's mind. So the person that you thought this should be decreed on is no longer here. He disappeared. I got rid of him. I did teshuvah. I became a better person. Hashem, so now your decree doesn't apply anymore to me because I'm a new person. All we can change is ourselves. This is the secret of tefillah, by the way. The Mekubalim spend many books and pages explaining this to us. But according to Kabbalah, this is tefillah. Tefillah is changing a human being through a certain prayer process, words, meditations, but to believe that I can just change Hashem, that's impossible. That's impossible. It can't be.
That's the hard part, changing it.
It is very hard.
When
But that's why rabbis say that if you pray without kavanah, without intentions, even if you read all the words, it doesn't help. What point is there to pray if you're not paying attention? And the whole point is to change you. If you're just reading, so what's the big deal? What did you accomplish?
It's I know Rabbi Nachman talks about like when you talk to Hashem, and like when you hear your own words, like while you're talking to Hashem, it's kind of like you're processing, like you're talking about a problem that you have, and you're talking. It's like you start hearing, like it's like Hashem uses your words to like wake you up, because now you're being conscious about what's going on, and when they start like. He uses that time to like you analyze yourself almost, and you start to tear back.
Is a time for cheshbon nefesh, for looking inside and fixing yourself, and this is the reason why I'm very wary to ever use the word prayer, because even though tefillah translates into prayer, prayer is get on your knees, clasp your hands, bow your head, ask Hashem to change the mind. That's not how tefillah works. Tefillah is all about changing yourself, which is why we do things like bowing down in tefillah and trying to bring ourselves to a certain place of, I want to feel, at this point, I need to break myself a little bit. I need to struggle with myself a little bit. I need to be happy a little bit. Depends on what kind of tefillah you're offering. But to think that I'm going to change Hashem, and the reason why people ridicule tefillah is because if you have a God, and your God's perfect, so why do you pray to Him? Stop interrupting Him. Let Him do what He needs to do. It's also not the Jewish approach. But people don't know what tefillah is. They only know what prayer is.
It's fine.
And because of that, we always risk it when we translate things into another language.
Doesn't Rabbi Aaron say that the purpose of tefillah is really to have a relationship with Hashem?
I don't know. He might say that. But I mean, okay. So tefillah is obviously to have a relationship with Hashem. But this, if we understand, Kabbalah teaches that we are a part of Hashem. In a way that when we have a relationship with ourselves that's real, we essentially end up having a relationship with Hashem. When we end up having a relationship with Hashem, we will truly comprehend ourselves.
Yeah.
Because to know me, I have to understand Hashem. So it's almost a two-way street. What comes first? This is very hard to figure out. But if I know myself, then I'll know Hashem. And if I know Hashem, I'll know myself.
In essence, it's the same. It's like the same thing, because like when we find our truth, it's like who we really are. It's the part that truth of Hashem that's inside of us. And so when we find that, we find Hashem.
Correct. Now, for those of you who are joining us for the first time in the Kuzari cycle, I promise you the Kuzari is very different than any of the classes that we have. The things that we talk about here, we don't talk about anywhere else. It's like an alternate Kehillat Shaar HaShamayim universe. This is where we study the philosophy of Hashem. Why? Because even though, yes, we have to know how to keep Shabbat, we have to know how to pray, we also have to spend time understanding these concepts. And that's what we're doing here in the Kuzari.
And I was just thinking, Rabbi, when we keep saying like we're assigning human attributes to Hashem, and how like dangerous that could be, and this, that, and the other. But like I think we gotta remember that like it's not like we're not assigning those attributes to Hashem. Like Hashem assigned us to us. Like everything that we have is an imperfect.
So we're gonna get here.
Yeah. Okay.
So in today's terminology, you hear a lot about ethics. What is ethical? This term ethical. What does it mean ethical? Doing the right thing. What is moral? Okay, yeah, that's the words we use together. What does it mean to do the right thing? Let me ask you a question. I won't give you the halakhic answer. What is the moral and ethical thing to do with a person who is no longer here cognitively, but is hooked up to a life support machine in the hospital?
That's rough.
Give me the more. That's not true, by the way. Although some will tell you that it's true, but it's not true. Give me a moral or ethical argument for why you should leave him on life
Just
support.
randomly, like a human being one?
Yeah,
There might be some sort of hope, right?
Yeah, there might be.
What if they survive the next?
What if they survive?
Yeah.
What if the doctor said there's never in the history of medicine been a person who got out of this kind of situation?
There's a hope you have.
It's very rare.
That
It
faith.
happens.
Okay, so there's an ethical. How can you? It's taking away a life. What do you mean? It's still alive.
I guess if I don't know, you'd have to know that person to like know if they would want to fight through that, or if they would want to like what decision they would make, even though if they're not able to make that.
Well, in
decision.
this state, people actually make an ethical will, or they make like a living, like a living trust, or like a DNI order, like don't resuscitate me, or and so can you follow that if you?
That's a great halakhic question. Also, give me an argument that it's a good thing to take a person off the life support machine.
If he's brain dead,
You're
but
holding the
disorder of
person
life.
to go to another, well, just, you know.
Chaim David Halevy has tshuva, which is as the cruelest thing in the world is to leave a person on life support machine.
Yeah.
There's
You're
no
hoping-
greater injustice to a person's soul
You're like
than to
in
leave
your-
them on a life support
You're
machine.
You're like in
like
jail.
What if they're in
You're
pain?
pausing them
What?
to like.
What if they're in pain?
What if they're, he says they're in pain, they're suffering, and if not the body, then the soul is suffering.
Yeah.
It wants to leave already, and this stupid machine that's pumping it full of air is not letting it go.
But there's
Is
a-
there which is right?
I think-
Ethically, not halakhically, ethically.
At least I know somebody did something right. My wife's cousin went through the same topic that you guys talking about. She's alive now.
Really.
She lives. They gathered. The doctor called all the family
And said, you
to,
have to
to
let
sign
it go.
to sign so
Mhm.
they can disconnect.
Pull the
But
plugs.
then my wife said no. I mean, if she's still connected because Hakadosh Baruch Hu wants her. Well,
There
guess
are
what?
obviously
She
different
lives.
levels of a person who's
lives.
not here anymore.
Oh
Oliva.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's right.
But my question to you is, which one is ethically correct?
Oh,
Well, it depends on
maybe
what
the one
standard
that
is.
let them.
Not halakhically, ethically.
Ethically, keep them.
There is no right answer. However, there's no right answer. For
Whatever the
everything, you
person
can make an
wants.
argument either way.
There's a yeah.
How are
There's
we
a,
breaking down
You're right,
ethical
there is
so
no right
halachic? Don't we? Isn't it by definition that halachic should be an ethical
Oh, so
choice?
this is exactly where I'm getting with this. When we say this is something, it's an ethical value that a person has, we're essentially trying to say it's a good thing, it's a positive thing. Do the ethical thing, is do the right thing. What is the right thing, though?
Depends what your moral compass is. What are you basing it
So
on?
it's subjective.
No, it depends.
yeah, it is.
It
It
is.
definitely is 100% subjective. You could be raised to think that it's okay to hit people because because your parents told you it's okay. Like I know kids growing up that thought.
Is
certain
it
things were
ethical
okay.
to be compassionate?
Yes, most of the time, not always.
Depending on
Wait,
what's your
so
culture.
explain.
Depends on your culture.
Give me an
Being-
example
Okay,
where it's
wait.
not ethical.
Being
to be
compassionate
But
could
what
be
he's
weak.
saying is relative morality, and there's lots of that. But if you follow the Torah, it's not relative
I'm not
anymore.
talking about the Torah here.
You're
I'm
You're
talking
talking
here
about
about
regular
ethics.
human beings.
But I'm not.
Okay.
It's not the Torah
You're
here.
talking about regular.
Tell me
human
about a
beings.
situation where it's you brought up a good point where it's
Okay.
not ethical to be compassionate.
Okay, so somebody has a really bad drug problem, and he's getting really sick, and you could either, give him money because he's really begging you and you want to help him, but you're really killing him. And the best thing is to say, no, I'm not giving you money until we can get you into some sort of program that's going to help you. It's sort of like tough love in a way, but it's not what you'd sort of call sloppy compassion, but it's the right thing to do.
Could one argue that not giving him money is the greatest compassion?
I think that,
Yes,
that's what I would say.
Could you argue that?
Yeah.
Yes, because
What about the person who's looking at this from the outside, who never grappled with this problem, who never struggled with this? Would they say that your tough love is compassionate? It's a great example, by the way.
Well, they definitely don't.
They definitely don't.
Yeah, I know of a situation where a family up in like North County of San Diego had a son battling addiction, and that person knew everybody in the Jewish community and visited all those people in the Jewish community to say, "Can you help me? Can you help me?" And they were all like, "Yeah, we want to help you." And then what happened was those people at some point started like really complaining to the parents that they were like bad people, that they were like they didn't care about their son, like they had no clue about this problem. And they
So this is exactly the way, listen carefully, and I'm saying something dangerous, the way HaKadosh Baruch Hu feels. Hashem makes decisions, not based on what is ethical or moral to you, because you or me, the uneducated, the ones who are not in the know, we are very narrow when it comes to what is good and what is bad. Someone dies, bad. Someone has money, good. We don't see the great picture of the world and what is truthfully good,
Right.
what is truly good and what is truly bad. Only HaKadosh Baruch Hu sees that. And therefore we oftentimes judge, how could HaKadosh Baruch Hu do X, Y, or Z? What do you know?
Or like you always hear, how if there's a God, then how come he lets bad people or good people suffer?
This is a question that happens all the time. The Prime Minister of Israel. Sometimes he makes decisions. I don't care which Prime Minister it is. And the whole country goes up in arms. How could you? It's not the right thing. How do you know that he doesn't have some file on his desk from the Mossad telling him, listen, we know that if you don't make this move, which will look bad to the people, this country will disappear. This is intelligence that we have. We were our spies in Iran, our spies in wherever you have. This is what the facts are. You think the president can release that to the news at 5?
No.
He can't. He doesn't have a choice. He has to make decisions based on things that only he can talk about.
Right.
And then we get upset. And listen, obviously I'm talking here about a world where greed and corruption and these things don't get involved into the political sphere. I'm just giving an example. And we'll go, and he doesn't even have a way to tell you. Sometimes recently this week I got a phone call from a person who's struggling with another person. And I know all about their struggles. Why? Because the other person already called me 2 months ago. But I couldn't tell it because I can't approach you with something I'm not supposed to know. Be very careful, by the way, to pretend like this is the first time you're hearing it. And this is something that there are decisions that I've had to make in the last 2 months, which I'm sure that one of these people thought I was being mean or rude or whatever they thought, but they don't know that I already know what it is that I'm not supposed to know until they told me today. I'm nowhere near HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So if that's what goes on in a mere mortal's life, you can only imagine what HaKadosh Baruch Hu is seeing, what decisions are being made, that we with our humanity, we decide that was unethical of God to do that. And this is exactly what you were talking about, compassion. Chazal tell us in the Midrash Zuta of Kehillat, the Midrash says that if a person is compassionate on cruel people,
Right.
they will end up showing cruelty towards people that deserve compassion. There are people that will advocate in Israel, because that's what I'm caring about now. There is no death sentence for a terrorist. Do you know that?
Yeah,
You cannot execute people in Israeli law. The only one person executed in Israel was Eichmann. The Eichmann trial, which he was a Nazi that was brought to trial.
I remember the trial.
You remember that trial? And so even then it wasn't so simple. But we have a terrorist. He's killing people. Israel has protocol on how to capture him without killing him. Because we're the most compassionate country in the Middle East. Because we do what's right. Rav Sharkey, who I'm teaching from his book now, his son was murdered
Oh.
by a terrorist last year maybe, or 2 years ago. And he was asked to speak at the trial. And he said, I need to tell the state of Israel that the most immoral thing about our country is that there is no death penalty for terrorists. You think it's compassionate. You think it's merciful. But it's not. To eradicate evil from the world is the most compassionate thing that you can do for the world.
And that's it.
Because what happens? Give it a few years, they kidnap an Israeli soldier. We let out 1,500 terrorists into the streets. Then when we let out terrorists, it's not somebody who was like working at the 7-Eleven that was owned by the guy who had a cousin who was selling bombs to Baghdad. This is talking about a person who murdered people with their hands. This person goes back on the street again. And the chance of them coming back and doing it again. Oftentimes we have repeat offenders, not a repeat offender selling marijuana in the backyard of a high school. This is a repeat offender who's murdering people. Who already murdered people once. And then they go back out into the street again.
And they're probably even more upset and have more hate after they get let out.
They hung out for the last 10 years with a bunch of murderers in prison too.
Yeah.
And therefore to have compassion on such a person according to the Torah, you might consider it moral and ethical, but it's a lie. That's not the truth. The truth demands that there's a different compass that we guide ourselves by. That we're going to express is the Torah. That is halakha. That is the will of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But in a world that's all about ethics, you can't make that point. You can't prove that point. And therefore the ethical person is really the one who follows Hashem's will. Not the one who follows his moral compass. Because that can mean different things to different people. Like Dan said, it's the person who the parents went to a therapist and got the advice of tough love. This kid has to hit rock bottom before he starts to climb back up again. But what happens? Who interferes? The whole community who out of their Jewish values is helping this person. Here, take some money. Here, have a place to stay for the night. Here, where do you need to ride to? All of this is damaging this person's growth. It's all under the guise of we're being better people. We're better than those parents. And we begin to talk about HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem is merciful. We only use that name about Hashem when we feel like Hashem is merciful. And therefore that cannot be one of Hashem's names. Because there are times where Hashem is merciful and compassionate and we don't feel that way. And therefore we don't know how to call Him that way. And therefore though Hashem may be the Baal HaRachamim, the master of all mercy, the epitome of mercy, we only refer to Him as HaRachaman, sometimes, when it suits us, when it works for us. And the last piece of Kuzari I read for today, and we'll continue that way next week. Let's just read this on 143. ואנחנו רואים כזה בזה, כזה. ואנחנו רואים כזה בשופטי בני אדם. We see the same type of behavior in human judges. כששואלים אותם בדינין ודנין במה שמחייב את התורה, ויהיו אנשים זוכים בדין ואחרים חייבים, when they're asked to judge and they rule according to the law, Torah, the law, ultimately some litigants will emerge from judgment victorious, while others will be a judge liable. Because let's read the English of the Kuzaris.
Will be a judge line.
A judge. והכל תלוי מניב השופט ודינו בלי השתנות בו שינוי. The judge himself, however, does not change as a result of his judgment, and I'll explain what that means. When a judge, a real judge, and I'm not talking to you about my wife always says that a good lawyer knows the law and a better lawyer knows the judge. This is, in today's world, it's unbelievable what one person who has a public defender can sit for 40 years in prison for, and another guy from Hollywood who did a worse crime, but he knows the right judge, he has enough money to pay for it, enough lawyer, that he gets out in 2 days. That's the way the world we live in. I'm not talking about that world. In a court of law, real law, when the judge declares Shimon guilty or Levi innocent, is that because he loves one of them or hates the other one? No, there's a law, there's order, there's a code. I follow that. That's what's true. And therefore, I have to judge you guilty, I have to judge you innocent. What do you want me to do? I have 2 witnesses, I have a video camera, I have whatever it is. What else can I do? It doesn't make a difference how much I love you. This is, so to speak, with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's going to say this in the next page. V'chen Hashem yitbarach, and this is the same with Hashem. Pa'am yikare el rechum v'chanun, sometimes he's called merciful and gracious. Upa'am yikare el kano v'nokem, while other times he's called jealous and vengeful. V'hu yitbarach einenu mishtane mimidah al midah. Hashem himself doesn't change. It's the same Hashem. So who gave him those names? We did. Why do we call Hashem that?
So we can understand a little bit.
Yeah, because that's how we feel about him. Because at this point we feel Hashem is a zealous and vengeful God. And that's not prohibited. That's how we relate to Hashem. That's how I'm feeling about Hashem right now. But we have to not fool ourselves into thinking that Hashem is vengeful or Hashem is merciful. Hashem is Hashem.
Right.
And Hashem does what is truth with a capital T. And sometimes we relate to it differently. And sometimes we experience it one way. Listen, 2 people go to court. One wins and one loses. One is going to call the judge the best thing that ever happened to the world, and the other one is going to curse the judge till next year. And both of them were in the same court case with the same judge. So is he a good judge or he's a bad judge? It depends. It depends. Did I win or did I lose? That's not a fair way to judge a judge. And that's what we do every single day. Says Rabbi Yonatan Halevy. I'm going to begin to explain to you the names of Hashem. But when I explain to the names of Hashem, you must remember there is a Yud Kei Vav Kei. There is a Hashem. Period. There's no explanations, no understandings, no feelings, no emotion. It is Hashem. It is what is the truth of the world, because the world exists inside of Him, and the world was created by Him, and the world operates according to the laws in which He created. Now we're going to use names? Fine. I'll explain to you how we got to those names. I'll explain to you why we use those names at certain times and other names at other times. But don't fool yourself into thinking that that is Hashem. Rather, those are just the way that we relate to Hashem. And Bezrat Hashem will continue next week. Whichever one for you. Yeah.
There's one thing that I read before where is there's all these attributes of Hashem, but I think it said that Hashem is not separate. So we don't like we have a tendency of just seeing Gevurah and Chesed, like judgment and love, and we see. When, like you said, when Hashem judges us in a way where we, in a sense, have to pay for something. Oh, Hashem, you're so judgmental. Like, why are you such a strict judge? And then it's like all of a sudden it's like the opposite side of the spectrum. And it said he said not to see Hashem as just judgment and just Chesed, because He's one, and we're separating Him into pieces when we're doing that. But to see like when Hashem gives His judgment, that there is full of Chesed. His judgment is full of Chesed.
This is something else we're going to talk about next week. It's not. It's something else. Because when we say Hashem, for example, lives, does that mean Hashem lives? No, we're just trying to show that Hashem is not dead. But does he live? No, because life means that it could die, which is not what Hashem is, but this is God willing and philosophy for next week.